I think he'd seen her quite a bit before this night. It had been building up for a long time. It was late at night. She's coming home, probably 1 o'clock in the morning or later. She was walking down the curb line. She had no clue that the attack was coming. He circled around, came up behind her, stabbed her. You could see a bloody drag trail in the furrows. The body had been displayed. Then there was sexual mutilation. This is just a 15-year-old kid. He lives right next to the crime scene. He discovered the body. He never reported it.
It's important you tell the truth. I have to tell the truth. I didn't do that. Would we bring you in here without some kind of proof?
This was a kid, when we searched his residence, that had all kinds of graphic drawings, mutilation. He was a suspect in my mind from the very first day, and nothing ever changed.
It was like a personal vendetta for him to come after me.
He was told it wouldn't end, that we'd continue working this case. You could see a bloody drag trail in the furrows. It was pretty apparent that the victim was dragged out to the final resting point. The positioning of the body is something to pay attention to. It was, in fact, a sexual homicide. We need to focus on him. His explanation for not reporting it was that he thought it was just a mannequin and somebody was playing a trick. And there on his dresser, he's got 7 knives, 6 of them survival knives, all sequentially displayed.
And one of them, Broderick assumed, could be the murder weapon.
This is a similar sized knife as the knife that killed Peggy Hetrick.
And leading the pack was Jim Broderick.
The victim's going to pass right there where he lives. Perfect opportunity under the cover of darkness to go out there and commit the crime.
And despite hours of denials from Tim Masters,
It's important you tell the truth. I have to tell the truth.
Detective Broderick was growing more certain Masters did it.
Dragged her into the adjacent field, and then there was sexual mutilation to her body. That you can actually see the body laying out there in the field by viewing through his window. And I think he positioned the body so he could then see it from his bedroom window. There's a misconception by a lot of people that because there's a lot of blood at a scene, it means the suspect's going to get a lot of blood on him. And that just isn't in the case. It had all kinds of graphic drawings and narratives about murders, violence against women. And we find a drawing where a body is being dragged from under the arms with blood dripping from the back.
Everyone would understand that this had been a terrible mistake, but he'd not counted on one very determined cop. Jim Broderick, meanwhile, had been freshly promoted to supervisor, and he soon reopened the case, focusing on his favorite suspect.
It had always been an interest of mine anyway, and now I was in a position to actually do something about it.
Jim Broderick felt that finally he had his man.
Well, I actually felt really good.
He headed for California, where Tim was working, honorably discharged from the Navy, and now 27 years old.
I think he was shocked. Seemed angry. I think he recognized who I was.
I didn't recognize him at the time, but it was Jim Broderick who had to kind of be there to stick it to me, you know.
When Broderick searched the house, he found guns, knives, and drawings similar to what he'd found in 1987. A few months later, police brought Tim back to Colorado.
To me, I think it all came together really nice.
He went on trial for the murder of Peggy Hetrick in March 1999.
Up with a grader, all of these tapes.
They destroyed all the evidence?
Every bit of it.
Why?
Ask Broderick. He's the one that ordered it.
They were destroyed, and we should talk about why they were destroyed. You've got all these victims that are on those tapes that were calling us and had legitimate concerns about the transfer of those images, which is a real issue in today's digital world. It had nothing to do with the Masters case or the murder of Peggy Hetrick. There's no connection between the two of them.
Would we bring you in here without some kind of proof?
The real hope was that there'd be some physical evidence. There'd be a fingerprint. There'd be something that we'd come up with that would match up with him. And that just didn't happen.
But the original investigator, Jim Broderick, was there as well to advise. He told a local interviewer at the time he had an open mind.
Hey, if there's evidence out there, let's see it, but there's nobody that's come to me, and I haven't seen yet anybody that can controvert all these facts that point to his guilt.
Broderick concedes it may not look very good. So you're just sitting there listening to them say there's this, and this looks like a frame job.
That's a position and a strategy they took, without a doubt.
And it wasn't.
Oh, absolutely not. You know, there was no effort to pinpoint just Tim Masters on this case. I made detailed, thorough notes, detailed, thorough police reports. My notes were represented inside those police reports.
And the question is, why was just exculpatory stuff withheld?
Well, I mean, obviously the defense is free to make that argument.
So any mistakes that were made here were honest mistakes?
Sure.
When you know that in 1987, Jim Broderick knows in his own mind that Tim Masters committed this homicide.
But Tim doesn't blame them for what happened.
It's pretty obvious who did this to me. It was one detective, Jim Broderick.
If Jim Broderick were sitting where I'm sitting right now, what would you tell him?
I wouldn't talk to Jim Broderick at this point. There's not a whole lot of love between him and me, so it'd be best if we just didn't speak to each other.
But what would you like to say to him?
I'm not going to say on camera.
What it really comes down to is I'm accountable to God, and I'm accountable to Peggy Hetrick.
Jim Broderick, the man who pursued Tim Masters across the decades, was cleared of wrongdoing both by the state of Colorado and by the Fort Collins Police Department. Looking back, he makes absolutely no apology for any of his actions. Do you believe he did it?
Well, I believe that I followed the evidence, okay? And the evidence pointed to Tim Masters.
They find the ex-boyfriend's DNA inside her underpants, on the cuffs of her blouse. Does that not give you any pause?
Well, you can find DNA evidence, and it may have an innocent explanation. So
ironically, Broderick says, Tim's lawyers only had that crucial information because of him and his passion for saving everything.
that characterological trait of mine of wanting to hang on to information, not knowing its future use, has helped Tim Masters, because had I not done that, it wouldn't have been available to be tested.
Peggy Hetrick's clothes would have been destroyed?
Everything. Everything would have been destroyed.